Okay, critical thinking. What is it, and why am I going to talk to you about it? Well, what is it? You've heard about it. You've heard people say that it's important, that people need to improve their critical thinking skills in this country and other countries, as we'll see. Um, but you don't necessarily know exactly what it is. Even if you're learning it in other courses here at ODU, or if you've had it in high school classes or something like that, you might have a general idea about what it is, but do you know exactly what it is? Well, nobody does. Probably everybody has their own definition. Um, I'm going to use my definition, in which I divide it into two parts. The first part, external critical thinking. That's the ability to evaluate the arguments of others, the beliefs of others, just any kind of information received from whichever source. Maybe it's the internet, maybe it's a president, maybe it's someone employed by the president, somebody critical of the president, maybe it's your priest, maybe it's your parent, maybe it's your professor, right? Those critical thinking skills, involve essentially the ability to think rationally about information that you receive, to be able to understand arguments, to pick them apart, to analyze them, to critique them, that kind of thing. I'm not going to focus on that part, the external thinking, because I think being a college student, you're already getting this. I think we're doing better than we think on this part, especially for universities. I think once you get a university education, especially in the liberal arts, you're going to do pretty well in this. So the more important second part is the internal critical thinking skills. I'm going to use the definition from the Critical Thinking Society. I think that's what it's called. Critical thinking is thinking about your thinking while you're thinking in order to improve your thinking. That's really fun and nifty. I love that definition. And you can see the internal part of it. It's all about you. That's good, right? We love stuff being about us, but no, we don't, because what this is basically saying, what I'm telling you, is that we need better critical thinking skills because we stink at it as individuals. And sometimes this leads to a situation where we're way worse critical thinkers than we think we are. That's super dangerous. So I am going to give you a short few minutes on why that is. And ultimately what it means is that we need to be really humble and really careful, because as human beings, we're way worse at critical thinking than we think we are, and that includes everybody, including me, and including you watching this, thinking, yeah, I can see that about other people. I know a lot of students who are like that. Not me. It is to you. Okay? Is to. All right. So, why is that a problem? I would argue that we're in a vicious cycle. Well, that's a vicious cycle. A more engineering-friendly term for this would be a positive feedback mechanism, something that increases a trend. But maybe the easiest way to think about it is the vicious cycle. Like a snowball rolling down the hill, it gets bigger. The problem gets worse. Why? There's several different factors, and each one in and of itself is not a big deal, but in conjunction with the others, they make each other worse. What do I mean by this? Our critical thinking skills are in more danger now. They're more necessary, or maybe they're getting worse, what have you, because of the situation we find ourselves in. Social networking. Social networking has taken over. Okay, so you got an old guy looking in your screen yelling about social networking. Not exactly. I like social networking. I think it's a good thing in and of itself. But when you combine it with the other things I'm going to talk about next, it shows you the problem. The next factor, political polarization. Okay, now you see where I'm going. Political polarization, we all know about. We've heard the term. Maybe you don't know exactly what it is, but basically there's two political parties in this country, roughly two groups, and they're becoming more and more isolated and opposed to each other. This is not the only country where that's happening, and we'll see later in the semester. But these are two groups of people that are becoming more and more distant from each other, more and more in disagreement with each other, and then social networking can enhance that or worsen it, make it worse. Well, what else? Oh, echo chambers inside of social networking, right? You have echo chambers, and probably a lot of you have heard of this, and some of you have a fair understanding of what it is, but basically information silos, locations online on the internet where people go to communicate with like-minded people. Echo chambers, because you don't hear opposing opinions. And echo chambers have gotten really good at getting rid of opposing opinions, banning, blocking, harassing, making fun of, piling on, etc. And so this tendency to only listen to certain points of view and to strongly agree with one side or the other is causing a problem. Other aspects of this: anti-expertise. This is an old thing too. This has been around for a while, but it's arguably getting worse. People are becoming less and less trusting of experts. And I don't know. I mean, I grew up, I'm from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, so when everybody had bumper stickers, and one of the big bumper stickers that you would see in certain sectors of town, in certain locations, question authority. Yeah, question authority. Okay, but don't go too far. Like, sometimes people are in authority because they know what they're doing, because they're actual experts with expertise. We don't have a problem trusting certain types of expertise. Think about an airline pilot or a neurosurgeon. We're okay with those people. But we do have an increasing problem with trusting the expertise of journalists, doctors, professors, climate scientists. You get the point. So this is a problem. Then you have confirmation bias. What's this? This is a psychological concept in which confirmation bias is when people only seek out and listen to or read sources that they already agree with. So human beings have a tendency, and this is the key, this is the real hard part, is that we don't realize we're doing it really, to only seek out information that's going to confirm their existing bias. All right, confirmation bias, that's a problem, but when you combine it with these other factors in today's world, it's a problem that makes all those other factors worse, and it's a problem that's worsened itself by those other factors. The more time you spend in an echo chamber, the stronger your confirmation bias might become. Your confirmation bias is what drove you into the echo chamber in the first place. So that's, to me, why critical thinking is becoming more and more important. I have developed and taught a course on it a couple times here at ODU and hope to teach it again in the future, although in our COVID world, class schedules are all thrown apart. I may not get a chance to teach it in the spring, but look out for it. So now we kind of understand the importance of critical thinking. Well, what causes us to get things wrong? Human beings are wonderful in a lot of ways, but in there's several important ways in which we don't deal very well with information. It's really hard, inherently, naturally, for human beings to be good critical thinkers for a few different reasons. If you get a liberal arts degree, you're going to understand why. And those of you in liberal arts, your parents may not be happy. Your loved ones may not be happy that you're getting a liberal arts degree, but the rest of the world should be, because we're going to make you a better critical thinker because of the courses you have access to. What do I mean? Philosophy. Philosophy is where you learn about logical fallacies, where you learn about logic generally and logical fallacies specifically. Logical fallacies like straw man argument. I'm not going to go through it here, but human beings are prone to being illogical in some ways. And if you get a liberal arts degree, you take a philosophy course, I would highly recommend it. You'll learn about that. How about psychology? That's in the liberal arts. Take a psychology course or two, you're going to learn about human psychology and the pitfalls that we find ourselves with just by being human beings. Confirmation bias is one of them. Another favorite one for political scientists, and you may have seen this term referenced on Twitter and elsewhere, the Dunning-Kruger effect. I encourage you to Google it, but the end result is that the more you actually know about something, the lower you're likely to rate your knowledge of that subject. No big deal. Some people are modest. But the problem is the reverse is true. The less you know about a subject, including politics, including vaccines, the higher you're likely to rate your knowledge. In part because you don't know enough about the subject to know how much you don't know. This is a fascinating insight, fascinating study. That's through psychology. What else? Business, that's not really liberal arts. But inside of liberal arts, you'll find components that address risk management. Humans are terrible at understanding risk. You can see this with COVID. You can see it with a ton of things in everyday life. Human beings do things on a regular basis that are way riskier than they realize, and they are afraid of things that are way safer than they realize. Classic example of this is driving versus flying. Flying is much safer than driving, right? But that's something you can get inside of business and other courses here and there, and understanding of risk management. So humans are inherently not very good at this stuff, and we're living in a world that where being good at this stuff is becoming harder to do and more important. So that's my take on critical thinking. What do we do about it? Well, we'll be trying to use this sort of critical thinking concepts as we go through the course. I think there's some rule of thumbs. One of them is Occam's razor, William of Ockham. The best solution to an open question is the simplest. That's not exactly it, but that's close enough for government work. You don't want a relatively simple answer is everything else equal better than a complex answer. Another rule of thumb, don't automatically distrust the experts. Maybe go ahead and trust the experts until there's reason not to. If something's sending off alarm bells for being kind of crazy or a little bit out there, it probably is. What's a good example of that? Conspiracy theories. Oh my God, please, people. I know they're fun, but this QAnon stuff is nuts. Okay, and it's not the first conspiracy theory ever, and some conspiracy theories are more plausible than others, and occasionally there's a real conspiracy, right? But generally speaking, human beings are way too quick to accept and be interested in a conspiracy theory. We need to just drop those altogether. All right. So that's where I'm gonna leave you there for critical thinking, and then next week we're gonna start getting chapter 1. Okay. So ta-ta for now.